It was 1970, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Susan R., along with her brother, had just arrived at the hospital to visit their stepfather. Making their way through the parking lot, they would soon encounter something out of this world. We parked the car outside of the hospital and started walking toward the gate. This silver object appeared out of nowhere. It seemed right up above us and to the side. It was in the middle of Broad Street. The object was saucer-like, very large, and had white lights around it. It was so close to us and just hovered there. If we had a ladder, we could have climbed up the object. They claimed the craft remained there for about 2 minutes. Then it went sideways slowly and took off at great speed and was gone. Susan noted that cars were passing by them as the object hovered above them, but they looked around and it appeared to them that nobody else had taken notice of it. She also stated that the incident still bothered her even today, some 30 years later. Duchesne, Utah, Jennifer J. and her 2 daughters encountered an object that had a very weird effect on them. In 2013, my 2 daughters and I were walking back from the park, and my oldest daughter says, "Mom, what is that?" She points up to the sky, and sitting there is a huge object. It was silent, no lights. As soon as my eyes were locked on it, I felt deaf, like I couldn't hear any normal sounds that were around us. My youngest daughter pulls on my sleeve, and I look down, and she has thrown up on herself. We just stood there in silence for a good minute. All of a sudden, I could hear the birds, cars, dogs barking in the distance just like before. That thing took off so fast, there was a huge mountain right in front of it. It should have crashed into it, but it didn't. It just disappeared. They described the object as long with no windows, holes, or lights. It was a dark brown reddish color. Immediately after the object departed, they ran home and remained inside the rest of the day. In 2015, a girl, who was at the time 8 years old, recalled a bizarre encounter she had while swimming at Lake Chelan in Washington with her aunt. Me and my aunt were swimming at the lake of Lake Chelan. Anyway, out of nowhere, I looked down and saw a blue lift emerging from the water right under me. I freaked out and swam to my aunt, and she saw it too. Out of nowhere, it disappeared, and about 2 hours later, when we were on the beach chairs, I saw the same looking light in the sky. No joke. I shoved my aunt's shoulder, but she was already looking at it. It hurt my eyes to look at it, but she was just motionless, not blinking. I finally got her attention, and she told me that it sounded like it was calling her name over and over again. In 1959, in Trenton, New Jersey, a night watchman on a state highway project filed for compensation after he observed a low-flying cigar-shaped object which gave off a terrible smell. He claims that soon after the sighting he became very ill and began suffering throat spasms, loss of taste and smell, deafness, and an inability to work.
The compensation board ultimately ruled that the witness had hallucinated the UFO and that his failing health had nothing to do with the sighting of a UFO while at work. I guess you could kind of telegraph that one from a mile away. It's not very often that a compensation board will rule in favor of a guy claiming that he was made sick by a UFO. It's an interesting case, though.
May 24, 2012, Port Elizabeth, Eastern Cape, South Africa. A man and his wife were at home watching a rented DVD when something that sounded, quote, like an electric humming sound suddenly approached and stopped directly above their house. They were stunned by the sound that they were hearing. They'd never heard anything quite like it before. Just then, the power in the house went off and a bright beam, quote, like daylight, settled down around the house. The witness asked his wife if she was seeing and hearing this. He admitted that the experience was so strange, he was having a hard time believing what was happening. She acknowledged that she was seeing and hearing it too, but she was too frightened to move. The witness walked over to the window and looked out, hoping to see what the source of the light was. When he moved the blinds to peek out, he claims he saw a very bright light which created a border around his property. It scared the hell out of me, he recalled. He assumed that the only reasonable explanation was that a power line was shorting out above their house. He began to worry that his house would catch on fire, but then he remembered that there were no power lines above their house or even on their street, as they were all underground. He began to feel quite panicked, while his wife remained on the couch unmoving, completely overcome with fear. Just then the light and the hum suddenly stopped, and the power in the house came on again. The witness noted that the entire event lasted only about 1 minute and 45 seconds. Afterwards, they attempted to finish watching the movie, unsure of how to cope with what they had just experienced. In the days that followed, they discussed the incident. The wife insisted that it must have been a helicopter, while the witness doubted this. Whatever it was 15 meters or closer to our roof. It sounded right above our roof. It had the ability to turn our power off completely remotely. It made an electric, very audible hum. It switched on a light so bright that I thought our house was about to catch fire. March 9, 2012, St. Helens, Oregon. A witness named Hunter, no last name was provided, claims that for 3 straight days in March 2012, a trio of Chinook helicopters were flying over his home in St. Helens, Oregon. It culminated on Friday, March 9, 2012, when the witness again heard them and went outside to watch them pass over. I went outside, and in between those 3, there was some sort of object that they were carrying. I don't know if it was some aircraft or something else, he recalled. Hunter claims that the object they were carrying was spherical in shape, not unlike a typical flying saucer. They were hanging onto it by their cables. It looked like they were escorting it. Actually, I don't really know. It was over my house, and I don't know how heavy that thing was, but they were pretty low to the ground, to where my dog was freaking out. In 1984, in Fort Hood, Texas, a girl and her brother were outside talking in their backyard when they observed what they thought was a 747 coming in the distance. I turned back around to my brother and began talking to him. All of a sudden he said, "What the hell is that?" I turned to look, and there above the tree line floated the largest craft I have ever seen. I would guess it was the size of 3 football fields. It made no noise whatsoever. We watched it for 5 minutes or so, then it moved sideways, slowly, and all of these black helicopters were following after it. The witness did not clarify if the helicopters were pursuing the object or if they were somehow assisting it. On November 1st, 2018, near San Jose de Maipo, Cordillera Province, Chile, a family composed of a father, a mother, and a son and daughter, Bastian 15 and Catalina 5, had hiked 2,500 meters up into the Andes Mountain. They settled down at El Yiso Dam and set up camp. Sometime that evening, as they sat around their campfire chatting, they observed 2 lights, one white and the other yellow, approaching their location on a nearby trail. At first they thought it was a car on the highway to the camping area, but the brightness of the lights didn't seem right. At one point the lights separated, one going in front of the other. They quickly ruled it out being a car. Then they assumed it could be people on motorcycles. However, they were still unsure as to what the yellow light belonged to. It was all becoming very odd. The lights approached the family's camping area, where one of them stopped about 60 to 80 meters away. When this happened, the white light divided itself into 2 lights, making now a total of 3 lights. One of the white lights seemed to be blinking. Suddenly, as the lights remained still over the trail, 5 humanoid figures appeared next to them. 2 of them were approximately 9 feet tall, very thin with long legs, long arms, and long necks. The 4th figure was of medium height, while the other 2 were smaller. Moments later, moving at an inhuman speed, the taller beings disappeared from sight, from right to left, and now only 3 remained. Soon after, the lights disappeared behind a nearby hill, leaving a sort of afterglow in the sector. The 3 remaining beings were no longer visible to the family, who were admittedly quite frightened at this point. Moments later, another white light appeared on the west side of the hill, and after a few minutes it began to change colors. From this light, a second white light emerged. Things continued to get strange for the family as the weather appeared to change immediately. It was so sudden, in fact, that the family actually wondered if these beings had somehow found a way to manipulate the weather. They were quickly hit with strong winds and a hailstorm that was so intense they were forced to seek shelter inside their tent. While inside the tent, a light approached and illuminated the top of the tent. Due to the sudden bad weather, they were unable to open the flaps on the tent to look closer at the light. After a while, the family, now utterly petrified, decided to leave the tent and raced back down the mountain to their car.
When somebody goes missing, a lot of times the weather will almost immediately change. It'll be like a sunny, beautiful sunny day, not a cloud out there, and then all of a sudden this massive storm rolls in, and it really hinders the searcher's ability to find the person. Or in a way, it's almost like whoever took these people, they're covering their tracks, in a sense. It's almost what it's like. This case, you have an instance where this family observed these humanoids, and almost immediately after, there was this massive weather change. It's like are the beings, I guess, are they able to manipulate the weather? I guess that's the big question.